Good morning, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you so much for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. Now, this morning, as I woke up, I feel one love. Let's get together and feel all right, right? I think that perhaps Bob Marley's song should be played on a big screen in the world, particularly in Haiti, right? We should be playing that One Love song. And why is it that that Hollywood came up with that movie? Because if you think it's Bob Marley's children, oh, it's Ziggy Marley and Bob's children that came up with that One Love movie. I don't know what world you're living in, but Hollywood sets the trend for what happens in the world and for the brainwashing of people's minds, because Hollywood knows that people like rather to go to the movies, and they like to, sit and watch nonsense. So they've created a movie to have you while the military industrial complex of which Hollywood is a part goes out to kill people around the world, or you'll cheer along and say, "One love, one heart, let's get together and feel all right," because you're cheering them along as they go and kill innocent people. What a sad state of affairs when we look at the fact that our people in the world are so indifferent to the sufferings of people around the world. Because if I have my smartphone and my iPad and my all of these technological gadgets, and I can access a film, and I can download my music, and drink my coffee and eat my food, what is there to worry about? What is there to worry about? I am not concerned about what is happening in my backyard. I'm more concerned about what is happening inside my house. And that is how people around the world, from the United States to Mexico to England, to the remotest corners of Africa, are thinking. People are not generally concerned about what is happening in the world until it reaches their shores. It's just like a hurricane, right? A hurricane is in Guyana or in Barbados, and Jamaicans are not concerned for the most part, right? It's in Barbados. Why should I have to be concerned about? I can't do anything about it, can I? And that is how we as human beings behave. We do not learn to empathize with our fellow human beings around the world. And we have become so divided that we begin to say, oh, my people, right? My people, right? And the Bob Marley music, One Love, One Heart, let's get together and feel all right, is not going to be magically achieved, right? It has to come with justice, right? Justice and righteousness, which means right doing, doing that which is right. And many of us, even on our jobs, are not inclined to do that which is right? Because we have to save face and we have to save our jobs after all. Yeah. Look at the sacrifice recently made by the medical professor at Harvard University. Is it Martin? I can't remember his last name. But he's a non-US, well, I'm sure he's a naturalized citizen, but I think he hails from one of the European countries. But he decided that he was going to stand for a certain cause during the pandemic. And because of that, because his ideas were not mainstreamed or did not cohere with that of the establishment, then they decided to fire him. And he decided to walk because he's standing by his principles and by what he believes in. which many of us are unable to do because we have to maintain that status quo. We've got to maintain our house. We've got to maintain our positions in life because we want to feel important. And why do you think Henri embraced and continued to hold on tenaciously to his position, even though it was not well, I shouldn't say it was an official position, it was, but it was an unelected position. Yet he thought that he could have gotten away with it, and he wanted to be in power. He wanted to have stood at the highest helm of political office, of political office in Haiti. And look at the humiliation. Look at how he's now humiliated. Right now, it seems to me that he cannot even return to Haiti. I don't know what the CIA and the FBI, how they're going to get him there. That to me is unwell. I guess after they have dismantled the gangs and take over back the ports and the airports, perhaps then they could get him back into it. But for now, he's unable to go back to the country of his birth. The man wants to sleep in his bed, right? He can't. Because no matter what, your home is your castle, and you're not going to sleep well, especially when you know that you can't go back to your place of abode, to your castle, as it were. Now, lucky for him, at least he's still in two pieces, right? Because Moise, gunmen came upon him in his house and they killed him. They assassinated him. So at least, based on what we know, Ariel Henry or Henri is still alive. Thank God. Because we do not wish him evil on this planet. Because life is sacred. Right? And as much as I do not agree with Ariel Henry, I do not wish him any that any evil befall him. Right? So I hope you understand that. And I don't wish that evil befall anyone, as a matter of fact. Even persons who I disagree with categorically. I do not wish that any evil befall any human being, because we cannot make life. What I will say, however, I will put you under the blood of Christ, and he will do whatever he wills because he is the creator, and he will do what he needs to do. And even if he does act, which sometimes God leaves judgment for the final day, sometimes he also dispenses some judgment before the final judgment is dispensed. Right? But last night before I went to bed, I read an article from CNN, and that's the CNN in Espanol, the Spanish section of CNN, and in which they were saying that there was an attempt to get Jimmy Cherizier. It seems that the police in Haiti are trying to invade that community in which Cherizier finds himself. And they seem now to want to take him, to sort of get him out of the way, right? They want to challenge now his power, his authority that he has recently taken over Haiti. That's an interesting occurrence. And I did tell you that Haiti is not going to win this war against the United States and the core group, right? It's not going to win this war this time. This is Revolution 2.0, as some people are suggesting, and I think it is, but this revolution will not be won. In the first place, we don't have a Toussaint Louverture, a man of that stature. We are not producing men of this sort of integrity, men who were just pure men, men who had a heart. I think that for some reason, these people are no longer with us. We're not producing them anymore. In the military, in education, in religion, just about in every sphere of our lives. These intellectual military giants were no longer producing them. And if we are, they might not be um, recognized as they should, because we live in an artificial world in which people like to promote and to exalt and to laud anything that is, and anyone that is superficial, if you will. Now, when I saw what was happening in Haiti some time ago, when we first learned of Jimmy Cherizier, I recalled what happened during America's first occupation, the US first occupation of Haiti in 1915. And the fact that there was um, a man, and he was a young man at the time, 22 years old, young Haitian, called Charlemagne Perrault. And he was the head of the Keiko or the Kako movement. And these were peasants, Haitian peasants, who were fighting against the US occupation of Haiti. They did not like what the US was doing at the time. Now, this was a young United States before it became an empire. It was on its way, it was fast on track to becoming an empire, but it was not yet an empire. It was as green can be in terms of empire and imperial undertakings in the world. England was where the United States is at that time. It was a faltering empire, as the US now is a faltering empire, right? But the United States was testing, right? It was experimenting with Haiti in terms of how it would assert its imperial undertakings in the world. And Haiti was the testing ground. So from 1915, perhaps before, Haiti has always been the testing ground for how empires around the world would, ultimately inflict their, or should I say, execute their imperial ambitions, right? That's what is happening in Haiti right now, and that's what happened in Haiti during 1915. Now, remember 1915, it was just some years after, not a few, but some years after the Civil War in the United States, which the Southerners lost, right? We understand that slavery went down. They lost in the sense. They didn't lose entirely. No. The Southerners did not lose the Civil War entirely. They lost slavery. They lost the plantations, that we can say. But we know that racism continued unabated, right? We had Jim Crow laws, and we had all of the other things that came about, white supremacy, the Ku Klux Klan, all of those things came up, and for Blacks to understand, and other minorities in the United States, that these people run the show, and that even though slavery, was abolished, but these people were still sending a message that they're still in charge. And the only way to do that is to inflict terrorism upon the minority race, upon people of color, as they say in America, because everybody is of color, but we tend to think that only minority people are of color. But there is no white person, as we suggest on this channel, which is not scientifically based anyhow, right? But it's a way for the elites to divide the human populace. But let's not get into that racial nonsense. This is a book, as I said, I am about to say it, but I have read it in previous times on this channel. It's entitled Haiti from Revolution to the Kidnapping of a President, an Unbroken Agony. And it's written by Randall Robinson. Now, Randall Robinson is giving here a brief description of what took place during 1915, during the first US occupation of Haiti, and the fact that the Caicos, the Haitian peasants, were against it, and they were fighting against this sort of US exploitation and abuse. So look at what, so he's talking about someone in Haiti because, this is what, okay, Ronald Robinson is in Haiti when, not during the first occupation, because Ronald Robinson was probably, yeah, I don't think he was alive at that time, but he was in Haiti during the deposition when the United States ousted the president of Haiti that in 2004 during the coup, that is Jean Bertrand Aristide. And he went to see the president, that's John Bertrand Aristide, and his wife, and they were reflecting on what happened during 1915. She recalled to the First Lady what the Marines had done to Charlemagne Perrault. And Charlemagne Perrault, as we are saying, the peasant farmer who had tried with his Quakers, revolutionary peasants, to resist the Marines. The Marines are the ones, what you call now the soldiers who went to occupy Haiti in 1915. The occupation lasted for 34 years, right? It was from 1915 to, not 34 years, I beg your pardon, lasted for 19 years, from 1915 to 1934. So the occupation lasted for 19 years, from 1915 to 1934. The Marines killed the 32-year-old Perrault and nailed his corpse crucifixion style. They killed him and nailed his corpse crucifixion style to a piece of wood for public display. This was done to reach a lesson to anyone who were contemplating further resistance. Right? So the United States of America is not going to allow Jimmy Cherizier barbecue to run the show in Haiti. The United States of America is not going to allow Jimmy Cherizier to humiliate them and the courtroom. They need to send a clear message, that's the US and its core group members and the UN, that they run the show. And they cannot have the media houses, and other independent sources of information letting you know that there are some guys down there who are resisting US occupation. By the way, we tend to talk a lot about the US about to invade and occupy Haiti, but the US is already occupying Haiti. From 2004, that was another occupation. And how many times have they occupied it? Right? Remember now that after the election of John Bertrand Aristide, somewhere about in 1990s, was it 1991? He was elected, democratically elected the president of Haiti. And months afterwards, a coup, the United States, went down there under George H.W. Bush and took him out. And then he went back, the military brought him back to power. That's brought back John Bertrand Aristide in 1994 under President Clinton. Now, it's interesting to note that a Haitian scholar was saying that we ought not to forget that Jean Bertrand Aristide was removed in 1991 by the US military. And we probably can call it a third occupation, if you will, because we had the first occupation, or the second, right? Would it be the second one? Because the first occupation was in 1915, that's US occupation. And then we had spats of different, eruption of violence, particularly during the Duvalier era. But we don't have any record on the archive suggesting that, the US occupied Haiti during the Duvalier era, the Papa Doc and Baby Doc. But we know that they were US, pro-US candidates, pro-US government, right? To keep communism out of Haiti, right? Because remember, that was during the height of the Cold War. And it is interesting, as the Cold War was coming to an end, Baby Doc was no longer needed, so he was able to, the United States didn't care. if the people wanted to get him out of Haiti, he was almost killed there, right? But the US actually took him out and sent him to an African country. So the US now is on a quest to get Jimmy Cherizier and his followers squashed, and to make sure that they are not in charge of the affairs in that country. Now, I want to say categorically on this channel that I do not endorse any gangs, good intentions or not, to head up a country. I can't. I know that power is going to eventually be corrupted, and the gangs are going to turn on each other, and chaos is going to reign, right? Because they are striving for power. And right now we understand, and that might be short-lived, that Jimmy Cherizier and his opponents, the gangs that opposed him, they lived, they were in opposition for many years. But they have united against US imperialism and the occupation of other countries. In fact, I understand that the oppositional forces, that's the oppositional gang forces, united with Cherizier because they were against and were afraid of the soldiers, the multinational soldiers who were coming from Kenya and Kingston and from Barbados and other countries. They decided that they did not want to be humiliated by these soldiers. And so they decided to put away some of their differences and to unite. We don't know how long that unity will last for. And that is the question. So I cannot and will not endorse any gangs, even though I do not think that they are the only gangs. What we do know is that the United States and the core group, they are gangs themselves, and the NGOs in Haiti, right? How do we navigate through such a complex operation and events happening in Haiti? It's just very difficult to navigate. It's so nuanced, it's so complex that you don't know how to separate what is legal from what is illegal. It's like a cancer, spreading through your body, and you don't know what organ to salvage. It's almost like you have to just let the person die, because there's nothing that you can do. And I'm wondering at this point of Haitian history, if that is the case. There's nothing that we can do. I'm not only saying this for Haiti, I say that for a lot of countries, including Jamaica. Sometimes I really wonder, what is the solution? How are we going to solve the problems of a country like Jamaica with crime and violence? I don't think it's going to be solved. That has been so entrenched for many years in that society, something that we have got to look at and we've got to pay attention to. Now, Chalmers Johnson, in his book again, The Sorrows of Empire, Militarism, Secrecy, and the End of the Republic. Notice he's saying militarism, secrecy, and the end of the republic, because right now, nothing can be divulged to the American populace because it is security for security reasons, right? And in the interest of national security, they have to keep it from you. And that is going to lead to the end of the empire. I think he deliberately chose these words, militarism and secrecy. Because once you have this gigantic military apparatus, secrecy comes with it. And transparency will not be the order of the day. And after that is going to lead to the end of the republic, which means the end of the country, as you know it. It might not lead to the full ending of the country, because the United States is going to play a very important role in the last days. And as we said in Revelation, as Revelation 13 mentions, it is going to cause the entire world to wander after the beast. Right? And maybe we should talk about the beast one of these days. Yesterday, incidentally, I was reading that Pope Francis is about to retire. And he was just giving an insight into what he will be doing after his retirement. Very interesting developments in recent times, because we know that the former Pope before Pope Francis, what was his name again? Yeah, I can't, his name has eluded me. But that Pope was Ratzinger, right? That Pope was Ratzinger. That's Pope Ratzinger. That he retired too. He retired in 2013, and popes usually don't retire. And for a long time before Ratzinger's death, both popes were reigning in the Vatican. Another interesting development in 2013 is that Pope Francis is a Jesuit pope, and for the first time in the history of the Catholic, of the election of popes in the Vatican, you've had a Jesuit pope being elected. And now this Jesuit pope, that's Pope Francis, is about to retire. Some very strange and bizarre occurrences in our world that we should keep our eyes on and see how these significant developments play out. Now, the United States is a military empire, and I hope by now Americans understand that it is a military empire, and it is on a quest for full spectrum dominance. And we have to understand that now. We are playing around too much, and sometimes people call me and they will say to me that, this person is going to win and that person is going to lose. It doesn't matter who wins or who loses in the US election, right? Because the United States is on a quest for full spectrum dominance, and it doesn't care what its citizens think or do not think. In fact, I was reading an article in the Political some weeks ago, and I need to find that article and show you, because you might not believe me because I'm just speaking word of mouth, and you might say, this guy's lying. And I need to show you that article in Political. And Political is a mainstream newspaper, by the way. It's not any independent source that you're going to say, oh, it's conspiracy, right? This is a mainstream American publication. And it said that the Biden's administration is spending or is about to focus, my words now, on foreign policy. That's a major thrust of his administration, the focus on foreign policy than on domestic policies, which means, therefore, that the United States is not concerned about what happens in the US and what happens to US citizens. It's more concerned now in its quest for full spectrum dominance on what is happening in its colonies, on its bases, if you will. Now, there was something that Chalmers Johnson said that I thought was, everything that he says is very important, but I wanted to highlight this for you today. Let me just read this. I think the American network of bases is a sign not of military preparedness, but of militarism. So the United States might not be prepared for war, but it is occupying these countries. The inescapable companion of imperialism, right? A major problem for that network is financing. Most empires of the past paid for themselves, or at least attempted to do so. The Spanish, Dutch, and British empires all enriched their homelands through colonial exploitation. Not so the American empire of bases. Militarized and unilateral, it tends to subvert commerce and globalization because it weakens international law and norms of reciprocity on which trade depends. But the more open and assertive we become in our claims to dominate the world, less appealing the old mutual security schemes become for other rich but militarily impotent countries. A contraction of trade, capital transfers, and direct subsidies will undermine the US empire bases much faster than was the case for the older self-financing empires. I think that is not what I wanted to read, but I read it already. So, when you're on camera, you just have to continue with the show. But I think this is what I wanted to read. Um, the empires, which is the US empire, Chalmers is referencing, the empire's values. Listen to what the empire's values are. The empire's values and institutions include military machismo, sexual orthodoxy, socialized medicine for the chosen few, cradle to grave security, low pay, stressful family relationships, including the number of spouses, political conservatism, and an endless harping on behaving like a warrior, even though many of the wars fought in the last decade or more have borne less resemblance to traditional physical combat than to arcade computer games. So the United States continues on its quest for full spectrum dominance. And at this point, the Haitians are up against not only the United States, but they're up against the core group. And the core group include Canada, France, Spain, Germany, the UK, right? All of these countries, Brazil, right? All of these countries form what we call the core group. And they are fighting against Haiti. When you think of the fact and talk about black and white nonsense, as you like to talk about, Brazil has the largest contingency of blacks in the Western Hemisphere, in the Americas, and they are part of the core group, right? They are part of the core group. I was listening to a Haitian podcast the other day too. I think it was on Thursday. And the Haitian scholar, the US Haitian scholar, suggested in his analysis that the current president of Brazil, Da Silva, that he was lamenting, decrying the atrocities happening in the Gaza area. Moments, I think it was some time ago, it could have been last month, when he, after decrying the atrocities happening in the Gaza area, that he himself, that is Da Silva, met a few moments afterwards with the Secretary of what's his name again? The U.S. Secretary of State, that is Anthony Blinken. Now, he met with him to cement occupation of Haiti, to cement that agenda, solidify that agenda, right? Whilst he was decrying what was happening in the Gaza Strip, in Gaza, in Palestine, with the Israelis bombing and occupying that territory. Yet he was afterwards, after moments of doing that, he was in a meeting with Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State and US Secretary of State, to do the same thing in Haiti, to undertake a similar operation in Haiti. Now, how hypocritical are humans, and can the human nature be? And that is why you cannot trust anyone, even though they might be bellowing and sounding the right words, right? The harmony is there. You hear some harmony and the music sounds to be, having the right sounds. However, it might not be music that uplifts you, that is uplifting to the soul. It might be destructive music. And certainly what is happening in Haiti at the moment is utter destruction. And we see the atrocities happening there every day. But the question is, what is the solution? How are we going to solve the problem? First of all, we have to acknowledge that we are up against a grandiose empire. And not only the US empire, but against other powerful nations like the core group, who are basically doing the bidding of the United States of America because she is the reigning empire. And there is so much ignorance in the Caribbean region that I was listening to a Jamaican TikToker last Thursday. I saw him at, it's amazing when you look on TikTok and you see people with their different channels. And some people, there's some great stuff on TikTok, by the way, right? Great information, that will help you to grow intellectually. Lots of garbage too. But that's the purpose of having a democratic society. So in which ideas can contend, right? It's not just to have noble and good information, but it's to have trashy information as well. But once the trashy information is not dominating substantive information, then let them contend. What we're doing, we're living in a society in which one ideology wants to dominate, and that is not freedom. All right? A democratic society is built on contending ideas. Let the ideas clash. Let the ideas contend. And we have to understand that. Now, the Jamaican TikToker was suggesting that, oh, what is happening in Haiti could never have happened in Jamaica. Why? According to him, because the British and the Americans would come and save us from what is happening. That is the level of ignorance that we have. And it's not only in Jamaica, it's throughout the Caribbean at large. When there is this order in the Caribbean region, people are of the impression, that's Caribbean people, West Indians, are of the impression that the United States is the solution. And that if they could just send their military and their intelligence gathering institutions, that they will save us. And that is so far from the truth. The Haitians are the only ones in the Caribbean and perhaps in Latin America. Well, in the Caribbean, we can't say Latin America because Latin America is a different sort of game. They know, they have had, experiences of the US military. And maybe as I'm saying this now, I think one of the reasons why Jamaicans and perhaps, but the Dominicans who were also they have experience of US occupation because, the US occupied the Dominican Republic twice, right? In 1916, just a year after Haiti's occupation, and they were here, I think, until 1924. And afterwards, that is how Trujillo came up, the very brutal dictator of the Dominican Republic, of the DR. And they came back, the military came back in the 1960s under President Johnson, when they came to take out Presidente Juan Bosch, that was the democratically elected president of the Dominican Republic, whom the United States thought was moving towards communism if he was not already a communist. Now, I say this to say that Jamaica has never been occupied. Trinidad has never been occupied, and most of the Anglo-Caribbean countries have never been occupied by the United States. We have never had a military occupation of any country. Well, there was a semi-occupation in 2010. I don't know the ramifications, how that ended, and we know that the state eventually deposed its democratically elected president. That was Prime Minister Bruce Golding, and the current Prime Minister was the one who was selected to replace the democratically elected Prime Minister. And it's very interesting that Andrew Holness, the current Prime Minister of Jamaica, is the one now who is heading along with Motley and Irfan Ali, who are actually leading that CARICOM group to accept US hegemony in Haiti as we speak. Now, as I talked, well, did I finish the story with the Jamaican TikToker? Yes, I did, because he suggested that, the British and the Americans would never have done, well, would never have tolerated what happened in um in Haiti if it should happen in to Jamaica. Not understanding, because most Jamaicans think that the French are the ones who are the sole responsible people for what is happening in Haiti. But yes, the French are responsible to a great extent, but we must understand too that Americans took over from French, right? Just like the Spanish first, you had the Spanish Empire, then you had the Dutch and the French and the British, and the Americans are now the reigning superpower, the reigning empire of the world, and you need to understand that. But America is so good at you know concealing its imperial appearance because it clothes itself in the guise of democracy, democracy and freedom. Right? That is what it's all about. Democracy and freedom. And all of these occupations, by the way, when we look at the first occupation, the first US occupation of Haiti, it happened under the Democratic Party. Because remember, the Democratic Party was the party of the Southerners, right? And there were, in fact, most of the Southerners that came from the South, Southern United States, who went to Haiti were happy to be there. They were happy to be able to kick the butts, according to them, of Black people, right? They couldn't wait. They were so happy to rape them, to abuse them, to do some of the most inhumane acts upon these pitiful Black people. And the whole mantra of the United States, agenda and its occupation in 1915, that's the first US occupation, was that Black people cannot govern themselves. Right? That's what they said. That they had to go to Haiti to teach Haitians how to govern themselves. And they have a similar philosophy right now. The philosophy has not changed, by the way. And that's why the IMF has to go there. Notice that when when John Bertrand Aristide also came back to power, which we cannot forget, in 1994, through the US military operations, they brought him to power on their wings, on the military wings of the United States. President John Bertrand Aristide went back to power in Haiti in 1994 under the Clinton administration. However, he had to have struck some compromise with the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, that are now the heroes of Jamaicans, right? They're down there destroying the Jamaica's economy, the Jamaican economy. And nobody is saying anything, right? Now, what happened is when, President Aristide, having struck that compromise, he saw where the IMF forces, were destroying Haiti. And the more you implement these policies, is the more the IMF wants some more blood. And when he saw that they were extracting everything, all the resources of the country, or most of the resources of the country, then he decided in 2000, was it 2 or 3? I think it was probably, 2003 thereabout, that he was going to speak about reparations, and that France needed to have paid back Haiti the money that it took from them, extracted from Haiti, which at the time and today is worth billions of dollars or millions of dollars. I think it's now billions, I don't know, right? And when he said that, after he made that statement about reparations, Sarkozy, the then French prime minister, he called the North Americans and said, this guy has to go out. They have to take him out because he's talking about reparations. And how dare him speak about reparations? And it's interesting that you have the Barbadian chancellor at the University of the West Indies in Mona campus, that's Hilary Beckles. And he is a major champion. He's a face of reparations um, for the Caribbean and Black Americans, I think. For all Blacks in the Americas, I gather. But he is the face of the reparations movement, right? He's been to Congress, he's been to Harvard, he's gone all over the world talking about reparations. And by the way, Hilary Beckles is a brilliant man. He's a very brilliant historian, and he knows the history of the Caribbean on his fingertips, right? He's very good. But sometimes I wonder if Aristide, one of the main reasons for which he was removed from power was the fact that he was challenging France. He was challenging France to repay reparations, right? And they took him out of office. Why is it that we see now Hilary Beckles and Mia Motley, doing the same thing, and yet still they're in office? In fact, they're being promoted. Isn't that interesting? That these people, are they doing something different? Is their approach different to how the former president of Haiti, that's John Bertrand Aristide? And I'm no fan of Aristide, so don't say, oh, this guy's promoting Aristide. But he was a democratically elected president, and I am an intellectual. I have to think. And I love to think, and I love to look at and make comparisons and wonder why. And the question is, why? Why is it that Aristide was deposed from office and practically is nobody in the world right now, as far as we know? Yet still we have the Mia Motleys and the Hilary Beckles. Well, Hilary Beckles is not a politician. He's an academic, but even so, if you challenge them, even if you're an academic, like what this guy at Harvard University, the medical scientist, has done. He's challenged Harvard in terms of some of their COVID policies, and they fired him. This is a professor, a university professor. I'm not sure about the fact you're saying professor. I'm sure that he was tenured. No, can you just be fired for challenging a particular policy or set of policies? I don't know. Is that the way the university is set up, or is that the future of universities in the world, particularly in the United States? I'm not sure, but that to me is bizarre, right? But you have the Mayor Motleys talking about reparations and reparative justice, but I think what she does in a very smart way, in a very clever way, is to merge reparatory justice with climate justice. And having done so, she's able to get away with it. Something for you to think about. Now, there's an article that came from the Gleaner today, written by Gordon Robinson, an interesting writer. And, in recent times, I noticed that he's not writing as he used to write. But this piece is quite an interesting piece that was written by this Jamaican journalist, and he's a lawyer by training, but he also writes for the Jamaican newspaper, The Gleaner. Let's look at his piece. His piece is entitled Gordon Robinson is his name, as I suggested. CARICOM, US and the Haiti Conundrum, right? And here we're seeing children look through a fence at a shelter for families displaced by gang violence in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, right? So these are the children, and they seem to be desperate and destitute. Now, very interesting, right? Very interesting. Let me see if they have another photo we can look at. to see what's going on there. Oh, these are the Anthony Blinken. This is the current chairman of CARICOM, and this is the Prime Minister of Jamaica. And then we have, let me see what the Gleaner has given us here. This is the CARICOM session. Interestingly, the last CARICOM session in Guyana, right? You had, which is something very interesting, all these people represented at CARICOM meeting. So what is the CARICOM meeting all about? So we have the front table from left is Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley, right? And by the way, she is Mia Amor Mottley, means that she's amor, which is amor is the word for the Spanish word for love, and also the Portuguese word, because in Portuguese it's amor, amor, and in Spanish they pronounce it amor, right? So the R is heard in Spanish. The amor, amor in Portuguese is almost like an H, but that word means love. So she is Mia Amor Motley. My love, right? She is love, right? She encapsulates, she embodies love. Mia Amor Motley. Then you had the US Secretary of State, that's Anthony Blinken, Guyana's President Irfan Ali, and Jamaica's Prime Minister. And all of these people, you know, were there. Now, this is what the paper that this is what Robinson is suggesting in his article. Having dropped the ball on Haiti, apparently shameless CARICOM leaders are huffing and puffing in an inelegant scramble to appear to retrieve it. I told you 3 months ago, the situation in Haiti was far more important to CARICOM than any fool saber rattling between Venezuela and Guyana. Because it's a business, whatever is happening there is business, right? And the more you can sell arms and you can sell this and you can sell that, we know that, they're going to make money, including your politicians. Jamaica should stay out of Venezuela and Guyana's who wants to be a millionaire contest. Venezuela is a friend, Guyana a CARICOM member. This issue is being pursued for Guyana by CARICOM. Incidentally, do you notice that, or have you noticed, I should say, that Guyana, which recently found that it had this great deposit of oil, petroleum in that country. And who do you think are the extractors of that oil? I'm sure they're American investors. So Venezuela has got to be on the side of America, because right now they see the economy of Guyana is growing at an alarming, at a rapid pace. So Guyana has to do the bidding of the United States of America. And this is what we've got to understand. If you have an IMF agreement wherever you are, if there are investors down there and they're extracting major resources of your country, you have to be on their side. You have to side with the people who are feeding you and who are helping to build your economy. And that is what is happening to Venezuela, right? Venezuela has to do the bidding of the United States, because right now, the United States is using its petroleum expertise, right, to extract Guyanese oil, and which will be sold on the world market, and Guyana will receive its proceeds from that sale. Now, instead of CARICOM advocating for its member, that's Haiti, we were treated to a farcical mediation in St. Vincent, where Uncle Ralphie, that's Ralph Gonzalez, hodged media attention, while CARICOM accomplished zip-a-dee-doo-dah, whatever that is. Meanwhile, the situation in Haiti, brewing for decades, became hotter than Jessica Pearson. We should have recognized the signs on Portland's coast, but were so focused on chucking Haitian refugees out, we didn't realize we were exacerbating the problem. Politicians' noses naturally tend to grow like Pinocchio's. I'm sure he's referencing the prime ministers, and often become large enough, obscure their vision. So he's also against what is happening to what is going on. Now, this is the only third time a U.S. Secretary of State has visited Jamaica. The third time. The first visit took place in our 49th year of independence, when Hillary Clinton stayed for a minute to hold talks with CARICOM leaders on regional security at the Ritz-Carlton. In 2020, Mike Pompeo, but he is not referencing that also. Hillary went back in 2009 or 10. Was it when they did those things? 2010. So I think it was the fourth time. He should be corrected. In 2020, Mike Pompeo spent 24 hours here to discuss U.S. Caribbean relations with Caribbean leaders. I wonder if any of these discussions veered off USA's favorite. Do as I say, not as I do topic towards mea culpa for American gun exports being the greatest contributor to regional instability. Because it's the US that is causing all of that, insecurity in Jamaica for the most part. Okay? But the politicians will not say. Now, looky here, he's suggesting current Haitian chaos is neither sudden nor unexpected. Politically affiliated gangs have been used to secure and maintain power for Haitian dictators since 1959, when Papa Doc created the Tonton Macoute. Every Jamaican should read an article in Wednesday's Gleaner, Why is Haiti So Chaotic?, that debunks that day's optimistic Gleaner editorial, Haiti's workable regime. The editorial muses on its face the proposed mode, or model rather, appears to be a potentially workable solution even over the long term to Haiti's chronic crisis of governance. Now, this is interesting. And let me see what he's saying here about Barbecue. As former Haitian cop turned gang leader, Barbecue pointed out in a public statement, yes, you read right, a brutal gang leader, making public statements. Nobody asked CARICOM to make appointments for Haiti. Barbecue promised the choice of the person who is going to lead this country we live in will be made by the Haitian people. And he's on record, that's Barbecue, saying that if they don't allow Haitians to elect their own leaders, there is going to be a civil war, right? He is on board, he's on record saying that. And I hope that we are taking stock. So this is what is happening in the Caribbean, that the United States is now letting the region understand that she does not want any challenge to her military industrial complex. And all leaders need to understand that. They need to be aware that the United States is on a quest for full spectrum dominance, and it's not the democracy that it purports to be. Americans need to open their eyes and understand also that this is going to haunt you forever. Because you're not talking about the killing of ants here, you're talking about the brutal killing of human lives. That happened during slavery, do you know that? Peddling human life and also murdering innocent human lives during slavery. And the Civil War was the payback period, right? The Civil War. And lots of other slave rebellions that took place, in which many Americans also were killed. So we need to understand that we are interconnected, and we've got to unite our efforts against the global elites and our local elites, right? And somebody said that we should not even be using the word elites. There's a word that she used. Oh, I think she said misanthropes, right? Misanthropes. They are misanthropes. And the word misanthropes means hater of human beings. They don't like human beings. The elites do not, what we call the elites, that is, do not like human beings, right? So we've got to read, we've got to investigate, we've got to dig deeper into the occurrences. Just don't look at what is happening superficially. Oh, and say that's happening in Haiti or that's happening in Gaza. You have to make the connection between these two undertakings and see how they are similar and how they might be different. But more, look at the similarities and how the messages being sent, right? You have to draw some very serious inferences. But that is what I think I saw in the media today, and I thought of sharing that with you, that you've got to see now that the Haitians are not going to win this battle against powerful forces. And I have said this to Jamaicans, and I will say to the Haitians, voodoo is not going to save you, right? And if you read the revolution, C.L.R. James did say that Toussaint Louverture found the voodoo religion to be backward. And many Haitian scholars are now, and Haitian activists are revising the history, and they're suggesting that it is a voodoo that saved Haitians from the onslaught of the French and the Spanish and the British. It's voodoo that gave them the victory. And they cited sources of Bookman that came from Jamaica, Breda, right? Was it and that he actually, performed some voodoo rituals before the revolution was undertaken. But let's be clear that Toussaint was not for the voodoo or the voodoo, whatever you call it, religion. As much as Rastafarianism is not going to build Jamaica, it's not going to build Jamaica. As much as African Zionism is not going to build America, American blacks think that, for some strange reasons, all blacks in the Americas and probably in the diaspora think that Africa is going to be the savior. It's going to be Zion. Zion, are you going to dance and you think that you're going to go and dance your way back to Africa? That is nonsense. It's utter nonsense. And if you understand the objective and the agenda of Marcus Mosiah Garvey was for us in the diaspora, able-bodied men, intellectually strong men, to go back to Africa and to build institutions, to use the knowledge that we have learned here. Do you know, by the way, that Toussaint Louverture, because there probably were two phases of the Haitian Revolution. The first phase, he was the star. The second phase was Jack Dessalines, right? Dessalines was the star of the phase two of which brought Haitians to independence, emancipation, and well, Louverture brought them to emancipation. And then Louverture brought them now to full independence in 1804, when they proclaimed their independencia, their independence. Now, the fact of the matter is that Louverture, when he won the French and the British and the Spanish, after he won those three formidable empires or powers, he rebuilt, along with the slaves, the economy. Do you know that? He just didn't, after slavery ended for him, he just did not say, oh, let's go and party and drink some rum and let's go back to Africa. Let us sing Zionism, right? And go back to Africa. Because he understood that it is a strong economy that was going to help Haiti to compete with their enemies. A strong economy. And in 3 years, I understand, based on what C.L.R. James narrated in his book, The Black Jacobins. And if you have not yet read that book, you need to read that book. And you need to make your children, if they are 10 years old or 12 years old, your children need to read The Black Jacobins and understand the issues at stake here. They might not understand everything, but they need to have a concept of what what the issues were during the Haitian Revolution, right? But Louverture, Toussaint Louverture, built that economy in perhaps 3 years. By 1997, now, based on what James was saying, the economy, even though the economy was devastated because of the revolution, as you'd imagine, right? Lots of devastation on both sides. And he, with his military genius, his economic genius, was able to rebuild the economy in less than 3 years or 3 years, to the point where it was very, because you know that Haiti was the most successful, it was the wealthiest colony in the Western Hemisphere at the time. And for him to have done that in 3 or 3.5 years, right? It was the French who came back and destroyed it again because they wanted to win, right? They wanted to win. So Rastafarianism, the voodoo, or has not built civilization. Because if the voodoo was so great as we think it is, why doesn't it defeat the American Empire? You know, there is no record that voodoo has been able to bring some sort of civility to Haiti, right? And the same thing, Rastafarianism has not been able to, or being a Black Jew in the United States, has not been able to bring civilization and to push Black people forward. Right? These are backward religions. And I see the Haitians, doing their stuff and smell the terrible smells that come from the operations of these religions. Right? We need, and I'm not saying this because I am casting aspersions upon Haitians or upon Jamaicans or upon African Americans. I am suggesting to us that we have to move forward with things that are progressive, right? And the Christian religion, okay, is a progressive religion. It is what built Western Europe. That's the Protestant, the biblical religion, the Bible religion, not Roman Catholicism, that plunged Europe, Western Europe, in dark ages for centuries. I'm talking about the light that comes from the Bible religion that Haitians need to grasp, that Jamaicans need to embrace, that African Americans need to embrace. Right? No African religion was able to save African Americans from slavery. Right? It was the Christian, the true Bible religion, not the one that was distorted by the planters, but the true Bible religion that white people and Black people and Asian people used to have liberated African Americans. The Civil Rights Movement was also cemented in the Christian religion, right? You might have some elements of the Islamic faith, but predominantly it was the Christian religion that led Black people to victory. And we have become ungrateful. We think that it is other things that moved us. It's Africa, it's Africa. And many of us don't even know what Blackness, because nobody's Black, but we don't even know what Blackness stands for or is all about. We don't even know. Many of us have not even been to Africa. And if we have, we still are not aware what is it that we mean when we say that we're Africans. Right? We're just saying Africa because it gives us some abstract sense of importance and escapism, right? Right? It's the same thing, I would say, to Euro-Americans and Europeans who live in the diaspora in the Americas, right? Who might be clamoring to go back to Europe and say that what they left in Europe was great. What Americans left in Europe was not great. And I am wondering, why do people even think that they would want to go back to that sort of situation in Europe? I mean, children should want to be more enlightened. And I think that Euro Americans left Europe because they wanted a better way of life. And even though the Christian religion was in Europe, in Western Europe, but it was not as defined. It had to take Americans journeying all the way from Europe to America for that and for freedom of expression to nourish the gospel of Christ. That we could have different, freedom of different religions, different denominations, because people were able to speak and to express themselves and to follow the dictates of their conscience. Right? So all of this nonsense about voodoo, and Jamaicans call it obia, and whatever it's called in other countries, right, is not going to save you from anything. Right? It's not going to save you from anything. I think we need to go back to reading about the two greatest members of the African diaspora, the two greatest men of the African diaspora. One in the 19th century, Toussaint Louverture. Toussaint Louverture. We can say Dessalines too, but Dessalines was more of the military guy, and he, guy to kill. Right? And sometimes you need these people, right? And Marcus Mosiah Garvey, that came from Jamaica. Right? Great Black men. And their ideas and their ability to merge, as I've said on many occasions, their ideas, their high ideals with what is happening on the ground. You can't just remain in these ivory towers talking about blackness. A lot of what these Black departments, particularly in the United States, stands for, it's almost like a religion. It's not anything that's going to free us. Just telling you some things to make you feel good. Just like the Bob Marley song, One Love, and you sing and you dance. In academia, they talk about blackness ad nauseum. Go to Howard University and we'll start with it. Blackness every day. It's like a religion. Nobody wants to have that sort of. I mean, if it's empowering and it's helping us to build, right? But when you look at Black institutions in America, for example, like the Howard universities and other universities, you see them as a microcosm of what is happening in Africa and in the third world, where you have the people who stand at the helm, they're making millions, thousands of dollars, while the people who are doing the hard jobs, the Black people who are doing the hard jobs, and among other races and ethnic groups too, get little and nothing. The same nonsense. But these guys are going out there and they're telling you about racism and all of that nonsense, when they themselves, control or operate a system in which the order and a similar system is maintained. The hypocrisy of the human race. Only the Bible and the Bible alone calls sin by its rightful name. And even though God might love you, he isn't afraid to say, Andrew, you're wrong, and to also punish you for being wrong, right? As loving a God, because love also means justice, the ability to dispense justice and not to be biased, right? So Haitians, you've got to stand up, but standing up along with voodoo, a backward ancient religion, is not going to move you along. It's not going to allow you to win against these formidable powers who are your enemies. Get on your knees and start reading your Bible. and ask God for wisdom and understanding so that you will be able to have some amount of strength that only God can give. Thank you so much for joining. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day. And remember to like, to share, and to subscribe, and leave a thoughtful comment so that we can be able to expand our community. See you in the next video. Ciao.